I want to start this dialogue just by bringing to light and expressing some solidarity for the families in Lebanon and in Palestine that are currently enduring losses due to the Israeli occupation. And in that context, I just want to also explain that this dialogue was inspired by internal conversations that were being had within the Mirsat team. And it ranged from what is our positioning as Mirsat and what is our positioning as individual members of Mirsat in Belgium and in the cultural sector. And it was really like a question of what kind of activities should we be doing or not be doing? What are the terms that we should be using or not using in our digital communication? So we had the idea of launching our festival with this conversation and to kind of open it to the public because, voila, there isn't really a conclusion. There's really just a conversation that we want to have about it. And so I'm going to start with the first question, which is, why is Arab identity significant for artists in the diaspora? Anas, who is currently an artist in the diaspora, maybe you want to start the conversation with that.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for mentioning the situation right now. I don't know if you can hear me right now. Here? Good. Okay, that's cool. So I used to be an artist. Right now, I'm okay. No. Okay. When you send me the just like the panel questions, I was just like thinking of each one of these questions is a huge research questions. So most of the thoughts that I'm going to share today, it's only my thoughts, nothing just like binding or anything, and based on my personal experience for sure. So first of all, when I first arrived in Netherlands, I discovered, because I used to live in, I'm Syrian, but I used to live in Lebanon. So I was familiar with the cultural sector in Syria and Lebanon. And frankly, they are not that huge sector, not have a huge field. Yeah. So you can easily be just like recognized or just like considered as a cultural practitioner or as an artist there. But when I moved to the Netherlands, I discovered that I'm only a number there. I was just like kind of, I feel like, how am I gonna deal with this huge sector, this huge cultural field? And then I just like start recognizing that maybe we don't consider or focus on our identities while we are working or functioning in the just like the native environment, Lebanon and Syria. Yeah. But here, we just like start focusing, okay, how am I gonna be recognized? How am I gonna be unique with what I'm doing? Then we go back to the identities. We go back to what makes us special. And it doesn't need to be in a good way, for sure. But yeah, so for me, we go back to our identities as a diaspora or a diaspora artists when we need to be recognized in this huge sector, in this huge field, in this lot of actors within the fields. So that's why we need just like to express our identity, go back to our cultural heritage, and to focus on it, because we need someone to hear us. This is first. Second, maybe we need to feel grounded. So maybe by going back to our cultural heritage and cultural identity, then it's easier to connect with the people who are similar to us, who are in the same circles, or at least intersect with our circles. So it's basically, it's based on these 2 points. First, on going back to this identity as just like to be unique, or just like to be seen at least. And second one, for connections. Yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, so it's at first it's really a question of scale. and then it's a question of your own personal need to be around people. Sarah, do you think that there might be other criteria for why it's important to bring our identity, or Arab identity in this case, to light?
Okay. So the mic. So, hello everyone, and I'm really grateful for being with you tonight here. While thinking about the answers for the questions you shared with me, I was trying, since I'm not an artist, I'm a human rights defender and I'm a researcher, I was trying to refer to artists and to scholars to being able to answer the question. So I'm mainly referring to the work of Ghassan Haj, to the work of Anderson, and in terms of artists, and of course to Edward Said, but also to artists like Etel Adnan, and other contemporary artists actually. So in terms of the why is the Arab identity significant for diasporic artists, I guess that our identity as Arab people, or Arab-speaking people, I'd rather say Arab-speaking people, in order to respect all the diversity that is present in our Swana or Middle East or Arab-speaking region, whatever you want to call it, because when we say Arab-speaking country, we really acknowledge the presence of non-Arab people like the Kurds, the Amazigh, the Yazidis, everyone in this very rich, culturally rich region. So I think that the Arab identity holds a significance for artists in the diaspora because it's helping them weaving together this very rich tapestry of cultural, historical, and also personal meaning. And this personal meaning not only informs their creative work, but is also informing our very fluid and changing and transforming identities as people who are outside, that people who are exiled, as people in diaspora. In this sense, I recall Edward Said that described the experience of exile as a state that is both creatively stimulating but deeply unsettling. So this duality is evident in the art of many diasporic creatures, even in EU or in UK or in the USA, where expression of longing and resistance, all form of resistance, become intertwined. This is where I recall, I always like to recall the poem of Mahmoud Darwish, أنا من هناك, or I'm from there. يعني. It is one of my favorite poems because it really describes this. I don't want to call it an identity crisis, but this very dual identity of being outside and not knowing what are you belonging to, your home country or your host country, your new society, your memories, your future. So you have to ask yourself all these questions. Also, Etel Adnan work like paintings and writing engage with this complexity. All her work and at some level were inspired by the memories of Lebanon. So Ghassan Haj's idea of yearning, for example, also complement the work of Etel Adnan by highlighting how diasporic communities live with a persistent fantasy of return to this idealized vision of the homeland, but also shaping the cultural output. I'll try to be a bit quick here, but since we're talking about the idealization and glamorization of homeland, in his work, Ghassan Haj, the ethnographic exploration of the Lebanese diaspora, he was sharing the story of this Lebanese woman who is married to an American citizen. And this woman, she's the second generation, by the way. So all the time she was glamorizing everything related to Lebanon. So when they went together to Grand Canyon, she was telling him, oh, it's similar to Adisha. He told him, come on. Adisha is magnificent, but this is Grand Canyon. And my partner is a Lebanese, an Egyptian human rights defender who is also exiled. So we have this kind of incident every time we go to exile. I told him, look, it looked like Jemaise. Waloué Saint-Lambert is zahle. Nothing the Lebanese food is the best in this world. So this is how we express our not identity crisis, but a crisis in understanding where we belong to. So this is where the role of art, of diasporic art, come to help us understand and accept the transforming identity.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for your answer. It really touches upon a lot of the things that we're actually going to discuss. So it's a good introduction. And regarding what you said about making parallels, that's something that I think I've had this conversation with several people who are also from Lebanon, where like Boisfort is Rabie, and and we have like our own little parallels that we've created within Brussels specifically. But moving back to the diaspora and being in the diaspora and having this perception that's kind of shifting, and then sharing that with others in the context of art in some cases. In the context of art in some cases. Do you think we have responsibilities as diaspora towards our community? Whether it's in the context of art, especially now when there's a war being waged against our culture, essentially. What do you think our responsibility is, whether it's within art or outside of it?
Okay, so I guess this ongoing war, not ongoing, not a recent war. It has been ongoing since 1948, but most recently it is manifested through physical violence, through cultural erasure, and through systematic repression. It's an ongoing genocide. So this ongoing genocide is forcing us as people who are in the diaspora to redefine our identities. Younes, who was supposed to be with us today but couldn't make it, she speaks to the idea that cultural violence fractures actually collectively our identity. And it's compelling communities to grapple to their own, or to the urgency of cultural preservation. So this is reflected in how Arabic music, language, and storytelling are being actively revitalized in the diaspora, especially during the last year. And I recall also, I wasn't born at the time, but also during the Lebanese Civil War, people who left Lebanon to Australia, for example, did the same. Actually, I have owned there, and they have been there since for almost, 45 years. And whenever they go back to Lebanon, they start talk in the very village accent that we are no longer using. So this is. Ghassan Haj talked about that in his work, and also Younes. Ghassan Haj also shared the concept of paranoid nationalism that illustrate how, in response to the cultural attacks, communities may rigidly cling to their identities, and this is exactly what we're doing now. It's a psychological response, it's a coping mechanism. This is how we are trying to save our culture, and this can be seen in diaspora communities that establish, for example, cultural centers, Arabic schools, festivals that celebrate Arabic-speaking heritage. So, however, I think that our responsibility as diaspora goes beyond the preservation, but we must also advocate for our cultural rights. At this very moment, Israel is bombing cultural heritage in Baalbek, my town, and in Sur, a civilization or a history of 7,000 years old. So this is why there is a need, and they did that in Palestine, they did that everywhere. So this is why we have to engage in solidarity movement and support social justice initiatives. However, this engagement should be intersectional. It is not one-way solidarity. And what do I mean? Or an example of intersectional solidarity, it is, for example, the Palestinian Black Solidarity Movement in the US. As people from the Arab-speaking countries, as people from the Middle East, from the Swana, whatever we want to call it, we have to create this kind of intersectional solidarity that takes into consideration and include all marginalized communities: the Black, the queer, the women, the human rights defenders, the all kind of minorities. Because as diaspora activists, we are not only custodians of our cultural of our culture, but we are also agent of change, and we must use our experience to advocate for a more inclusive and just world.
Thank you. Yes, so just to go from there, based on all of those responsibilities that you're referring to, including all of those minorities, Anas, in your work as a cultural activist, is that something that you felt like you had to, as Sarah was saying, compensate? Was it more of a defense mechanism? Was it more of a way of survival? Or was it really like, are you sharing your culture also with the Western audience in order to preserve it, seeing as it's being destroyed in its native space?
So yeah, so first of all, for me, when I first moved to Europe, I was just like lost between these two approaches of dealing with my art, my practice, or my work in general, between being or trying to focus on cultural preservation of my own identity, my own art, my own culture, or being protectionist about it. So basically, then I don't know if you are familiar with the Dutch integration process for the newcomers or for the immigrants. They totally immerse people identities within the Dutch, just like culture, which is I totally against. Fortunate for me, I was lucky enough to get a post of, I work in education in Netherlands. So I do teach supposedly theater classes for youth in the ACC centers, which is community centers for newcomers. They call it newcomers, which is refugees. So I started teaching them literally theater classes in the first 3 months or 4 months. And then I discovered then, okay, they are here. They assigned me to do this task. But I was working with immigrants from all backgrounds, not only from the Arab region. But I was just like, during the work, I was just like asking them questions about their culture, their identity, how their heritage. And the answers were really indicating a really sad situation. Then I started transforming my classes into culture coaching classes, which is just like, okay, you come to the class and then I will do any cultural exercise, not necessarily related to theater. Once I was drawing the world map and I was just like asking the youth, and the youth here, just like between 16 to 20. So I was asking them, where are you from? As simple as that, just like point on the whiteboard. And unfortunately, none of them were able to point where he is from. And also, I was just like going advanced, that asking them about what is the most thing that they like about their own culture. And they were just like saying some generic things, not specific things. And the people, the students that I'm teaching are from Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Ukraine, Iraq, Iran. They have really rich culture. They don't know anything about their culture. And yet they are in the process of indoctrinating into the Dutch culture. So that's what made me, okay, I need to do something. As a culture practitioner, I need to do something about it, because in 1 year or 2 years, they won't even remember their own language. So this is how I try to transform my practices into not being protectionist, but being preservation, or just like focusing on the preservation approach by working with the youth and adults and children. This is for the education, which is I truly believe. But if we are just like talking about the European policy about the immigrants and how they are dealing with their own culture, there is two concepts we study in the culture study and cultural policy, which is the European Union are dealing with the immigrants in a transcultural way, or they applying their transcultural approaches, which is emerging their own identities and culture in their new culture. but we have another thing in the Arab world called al-musaqafa. Al-musaqafa, it is interculture. Interculture, which is mean exchanging between these two cultures, which is basically Hegelian approach about the dialectic between these two cultures. That won't remove any of the cultures, just like mix them together and just like having a new synthesis. Which is, I truly believe in that. This is how we can do it. So I truly follow, or I try to follow, this approach in all of my practices. In teaching, in performances, in workshops, and everything. So yeah.
Thank you. It's really nice to see how that thought process kind of gets applied in practice. And I'm gonna skip a question because the question after is much more relevant to what we're just talking about, which is hybridization and romanticism of our cultures, which sometimes we see it often happen in sometimes first generation, very often second generation immigrants. So I'm wondering how does the experience of exile affect the identity in this conversation as Arabs, and it really kind of also boils down to what would you consider yourself as an Arab, especially when there's several generations coming. There's a lot of people who are of Arab origin but don't necessarily identify as Arabs, and vice versa. There are others who do identify as Arabs but don't necessarily speak the language. And so, yeah, maybe Sarah, you can introduce.
Thank you. So here, please allow me to take one extra minute for this question to share with you a part of a text I co-author with my partner, who, as I told you, also an exiled human rights defender. So we wrote that exile is imposed, and the desired is what we want but what we fear, what we seek and what we cannot adapt to. The widest space of freedom that is narrowed by the narrowness of language, expression and vision. And it is like our idea of the country, vast and unknown, and we are still at the beginning of the journey. And in the process of looking for meaning, is the violence which our country faced us when we demanded rights and freedom a political and historical condition for exile, or is exile an opportunity for us to redefine the descendant identity and the fractured self for consideration related to the private experience, as it is the form of a fluid and flexible identity that we become when we deviate from the pattern. So in other words, exile is not always an option. In most of the cases, you are must to go into exile, especially if you are Syrian, especially if you are from Iran, from Ukraine, from Egypt. But for me, as Lebanese, it was a chosen exile, because in many cases, the personal and exile turn into a public political. It's very similar to when we speak about feminism. Personal is also political. Also an exile, personal is public political, and the public that becomes also personal due to how much it is attached to the dimension of individual identity. So our own stories are nothing but a tangible, our own story, the story of everyone in exile, of every human rights defender in exile, and nothing but a tangible reflection of this question. So this is why, I can say with trust that exile deeply influenced Arab identities. Also, Ghassan Haj in his work talked about the capitalist diaspora and what does it mean. But however, our experience is making our identities fluid and constantly evolving. Mahmoud Darwish poetry and his work on the gradual exile actually captured the duality of exile, where home is both a place of longing and a memory that cannot be reclaimed. There is also the work of Ghassan Haj, who discussed the concept of stuckedness, the feeling of being emotionally connected to a homeland that remains physically out of reach. So if I want to end here, I would say that the questions exiles face phase, what part, or people in exile phase, that what parts of that culture to retain, how to pass their heritage to the next generation, highlight the complexity of belonging, because exile can lead to a rich, multifaceted identity, but also a perpetual feeling of otherness, where home is never fully here or there.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting to see it in those terms, because it really gives words to what we're, us as immigrants, kind of all feeling. I'm wondering, maybe Anas, you can also add to this, and also referring back to your story about your students. In this case, I mean, I would imagine that oftentimes choosing what to pass on and what not to pass on might also be a way of keeping their children safe, also keeping them away from that identity to the best of their ability, to reduce racism, to reduce their own feeling of otherness, so that they can feel as much as they can that they are integrated. So yeah, maybe Anas, you can elaborate more on.
Okay, I can. I will try. So basically, I'm gonna try to talk about the Syrian experience in this. I'm not gonna be generic about it, but because I have witnessed this and I'm still witnessing this. If with the students, or just like any other workshops, or just like trainings I'm doing right now. So basically, there is two kind of reaction. So what's to the exile, because mainly for Syria, not for all people, but yeah, it's forcibly exile, just like immigration. So it's not by their choice. So that will create a reaction, or yeah, a reaction to the original identity, the original culture. So I have worked with cultural activists, with artists in Germany, who has been Syrian artist in Germany, who has been living in Germany for 10 years right now, or 9 years. So they are all have the German citizenship. And all of them, the common things between them are they don't want to deal or communicate or maybe acknowledge that they are from Syria, which is totally rejection of their own identity and their own culture. On the other side, there is the people who are romanticizing their own culture, who are just investing in their own identity to be seen in front of the host community right now. And I was all the time thinking of, okay, there is no middle way. There is, because yeah, especially we were talking before the talk about Ma'luba collective. And Ma'luba collective is just like a theater collective, for performing arts collective, for artists who wanna do their art in their own language, or their just like native language. So they are doing theater performances in Arabic in front of German audience, in front of European audience, which is a choice that you can take. But in this case, you need to understand the perception of the audience. What do they need about, are they here to attend a Syrian artist, or they are here to attend an artist? As simple as that, which is a problem that I'm facing right now, a challenge that I'm facing right now. Even though in Groningen, in the north of Netherlands, they are treating me as, okay, you are a Syrian artist, or in between quotation, you are immigrants artists. So we are treating you based on that. You are teaching the newcomers. You are working in a festival for MENA region. You are doing such a thing. I'm not recognized. I'm not considered as an artist. So there is this isolation, this rejection, and there is the production terms that is forcing you to be flexible about how you present yourself, how do you present your image in front of the sector itself. So I'm talking about here, I don't know, I'm trying to be, or to create this common ground, or the middle ground between this isolation, rejection, and this being romanticizing, fetishizing also, really, the Arabic or the Oriental culture. So I don't know if I'm gonna be successful in that, because I'm only here for 1 year right now. I don't know, about maybe in 5 years I'm gonna change my minds about it. I don't know, I really don't know. But I'm thinking right now, there is no one functioning in the middle ground of this, which is really a need right now. I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. So yeah.
Thank you. We're trying.
Merced, yes.
Yes, we're
yes,
trying
exactly.
really hard. That's why we're having this conversation. I want to take this conversation a bit back towards our region, because as we're talking about hybridization and merging cultures and all of this, we're still referring to people from that region as Arabs. Yes. And whether it's correct or not correct, not everybody identifies with that. We're going to get to the terminology after, but first I want to talk about the fact that the Palestinian cause, for example, is very often something that you would notice just in conversation. You often feel that that's something that could be unifying the different parts of the Arab world together, whether it's politically or socially even. So really like on a ground level, not governmentally, because that's a whole other conversation. So just to make sure. So I'm just wondering if maybe Sarah, you can start with that. If you can talk about a bit how this is impacting the relationship between the Mashriq and the Maghrib of the Arab world.
So I think that the Palestinian cause has always been a rallying point for people either in Maghrib or Mashriq. During the first Intifada, people were protesting in Casablanca in solidarity with Palestine. Currently, during this year, we're seeing people in Tunis also protesting and standing in solidarity with Palestine. Edward Said has framed Palestine as a central metaphor for Arab solidarity, like a symbol transcending geographical and political boundaries. But if I may add, I will say that currently the Palestinian cause transcends the MENA, the SWANA, the Arab-speaking region, whatever we want to call, but it's also the new woke culture all over the world. It is what reminding us of how genuine we are and how authentic we've been when we are saying that we are human rights defenders or we believe in human rights. Ghassan Haj analysis actually add depth to that by showing how solidarity movements can at the same time unify but also expose existing violations. So in practical terms, the Palestinian question has inspired cross-regional but also inter-regional and global activism, as seen during the first Intifada, as seen now, and in the diaspora. And I think that what is happening currently in Europe, it is that we've never seen something like that. It's my first year in Europe. I cannot say that I made my own observations, but from what I saw on media and even from the research that I've read, it is the first time that we saw this level of solidarity among Europe from people who are not Arabic speaking, not even from the MENA or the SWANA, and standing in solidarity with Palestine. Because Palestine has been thought-provoking at all levels, at academia level, activism, culture, art. Still there are tensions, especially in how different, for example, the colonial histories and post-independence politics influence solidarity, especially in countries, for example, like Lebanon, like Tunis, like Morocco and else. Yet Palestine remain a compelling force that fosters dialogue, and this is what we are doing here today, and unity in the broader Arab-speaking community.
Thank you. Anas, maybe you can also talk about that and maybe you can also discuss, like Sarah kind of opened it up to the global conversation that's being had right now, and yeah.
Okay. For me, it's really intense, just like topic, because I have been dealing with this since October 7th last year. And I've been facing a lot of problems because for me, for the question that you ask about, is it unifying or just like, is it thing that is, for me, it's more unveiling more than, unveiling more than unifying. And here I'm talking about the culture sector or culture field in the Arab region. Maybe, so I'm going to be punctual about it, just like to make sure that it's not generic. Okay. Because we have faced a lot of, I don't know if I can say it, but problems, I don't know, existential, something existential problems within the cultural field, because most of the cultural field in the Arab region are funded by the EU and from the north, unfortunately. So we are dependent on the fund of the governments that we don't agree with their policies, with their agenda, with their statements on a daily basis. And then some main cultural organization or cultural agents in the Arab region started to boycott these funders, and the others continue to work with them, which opened the floor for a new kind of accusation between the cultural organization, the cultural actors who are working in the same field. You are taking fund from GIZ, you are taking fund from blah, blah, blah. I'm not taking funds, I'm more activist than you. So it's not unifying, unfortunately, because, but if you try to think, if you try just like to see it in a kind of objective way, I can understand why he's still taking fund from this donor and why you are boycotting. It's a good thing, but if all of us just started boycotting the funders and donors from the EU or from the North, then none of the cultural activism or cultural interventions or cultural initiatives, programs, activities, projects, it's going to happen. And this reflects on many other sectors, but I'm talking about my own sector that I work in, function in. So it's an ethical dilemma that we are facing right now, especially between Syria, who is just like literally acting, I'm dead, I'm not here, I don't want to comment about this, I don't want to talk about this. Lebanon, which is the same situation as Palestine. Egypt. Can you imagine Egypt and all of the German cultural institutions that are still functioning in Egypt and still funding in Egypt, and Egyptian just like activists still functioning, which I totally understand. I'm not just saying that it's a negative way, but there is a huge gap that is starting between the cultural sector, cultural field in the Arab region, which is not unifying. You may see it in the global solidarity image. That is really a good thing, but I think speaking truth to power right now, I think we need to discuss the elephant in the room about, okay, right now we need to start thinking about what is ethical funding, what is how we are gonna set our terms and for the donors. Start renegotiating the terms with them, not only accepting, just like, okay, we accept because we need the money, which is totally understandable, but we need to think about it at least. So yeah.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's interesting to see how when we see more solidarity on one side, we also see a big resistance of that solidarity on the other side, and we, as you said, things start to get revealed of who is supporting what really, and it also brings to the question of pragmaticism to a certain extent, of like, how are we going to get to the point where we can say what we need to say and share what we need to share, while also understanding the reality of the situation and the reality of how things are being discussed and how we're being seen. On that note, let's talk about the terminology between pragmaticism and what's fair and what's correct, and how do we recognize ourselves? How will we make it so that other people are recognized? And how do we also, I mean, we don't want to be exclusive, but we still want to be able to, you know, نضب على بعض, like like to be within our bubble and each other's bubble, to be together. And so, yeah, so as you've been repeating, Sarah, we have the terms Mina, Swana, Arab speaking, from the Arab region, from the, you know, there's so many terms. This is really like our biggest conversation that we've had for the past like year and a half.
Yes.
Of like, what do we use? Finally, if you notice in our social media, we started using, in English we use Swana, in Arabic we use Arab, and it was kind of like, okay, it's in Arabic, we're not going to write Swana. And at the same time, to a certain extent, yeah, the word Arab has this conversation all around it, but at least when we're speaking in Arabic, we'd like to take that back. Yeah, but again, it's not set in stone, so what do we do? How does this... There is one more thing, is that do we use them? Do they help us become identifiable? Or are they affecting the way that we're being perceived? Are they limiting us?
Yes. Actually, before answering this question, I want to tell Anas that, Anas, I totally resonate with you, with what you said. When I talked about solidarity, I was talking more about independent social movement, non-funded social movement, not about NGOs. We, at this very moment, in the MENA region, in this one, Arab-speaking countries, whatever you want to call it, we are all facing, as NGOs, I work for NGOs, we are all facing that ethical dilemma. And I think that the origin of this ethical dilemma started not only from the fund or the cutting of fund and the resources, but it has started from something we call the colonized knowledge production about this part of the world. For example, when we talk about social movement in the region, do you know that as people from this part of the world, we don't have our own definition of what is a social movement? We are all still referring to the very Western academia, to Charles Tilly and Sidney Taro, to define a social movement as peaceful and as a human rights-based approach. But what about the people who were engaged in political movement actually back in 2011, and they failed because of the oppression and because of the support that the West has provided to these regimes, either, Bashar al-Assad in Syria or Sisi in Egypt or elsewhere, and then they asked us to do miracles with protesting and to sacrifice ourselves to get almost kill ourselves by taking the street, and they wait like us to do the change, the very peaceful change they want in the region. So if we want to see a real change in the region, we have to start with the definitions, with what is a social movement. What is a very thin line between political and social, and is it acceptable for people when they fail doing their political activism to switch into social? Like, we have to discuss that, and we have to rethink how to integrate these people. And then this brings us to the definition of MENA, Swana, Arab-speaking region. For me, those are labels, stereotypes, and labels that only reinforce the Eurocentric approach and perspective. So Arab-speaking are not only, or MENA or Swana, are not only geographical labels. Actually, these definitions shape how Arabs are perceived, both internally by other Arab-speaking or Arabs or Middle Eastern, North African, whatever, but also by the host communities in the West or in Europe or in the US. Johannes Fire critiques actually these terms because she thinks that these terms are oversimplifying the diversity within Arab culture, and they are often reinforcing stereotypes. Ghassan Haj, on the other hand, suggests that such labels are part of a broader colonial discourse that seeks to categorize and control how Arabs are understood in the global arena. So the MENA, for example, the term MENA often emphasizes that geopolitical conflict or overshadow also cultural diversity. SWANA has emerged to be, for example, a more inclusive and alternative term for MENA, but yet it still struggles to capture the region complexity. So these terms affect everything from representation in media to the academia also, to how communities are organized, politically and diaspora context. For example, the use of these labels is highly influencing advocacy in terms of mobilization, advocacy at the level of EU, and also our visibility. So while they can, for example, contribute to creating some sort of mobilization and solidarity, they also risk reinforcing narrow views of the Arab identity. And this process actually is also reclaiming the urge for Arab diaspora or Arab-speaking diaspora to re-identify, identify, and rethink their own language, because our language is a part of a broader struggle for self-representation and cultural dignity.
Thank you. This is very much what we've been feeling when using these terms, and there was always this conflict, as I was saying before, of like, you know, if we were in Lebanon, this would not be a problem. Like, it's obvious. But yeah, I mean, we're here, we're trying to find a way to collect, and we can't also, you know, cater to everyone, but at the same time, we want to be inclusive, and at the same time, we want to cater to those that we relate to, not because the others don't matter, but because, well, we have to do something, and we are choosing to help this group. So, Anas, how have you dealt with this in your own practice? And so when you see things like Arab Theatre Festival and looking for SWANA artists in the performing arts, what does this mean to you?
Okay, first of all, Sarah's rage really representing me. Thank you. Really.
Great.
While you're just like reflecting and expressing your feeling about these terms. And I totally agree with you. I totally attend this feeling, literally, on a daily basis. And I will quote you, because you were saying MENA, Arab-speaking countries, and SWANA, and whatever. I'm gonna hand to whatever. Whatever. This is a good good term. Whatever. We're gonna start from this because what I'm afraid of, and you expressed that it's gonna be the new funding trend, unfortunately. SWANA. Okay, so we transformed from MENA to SWANA. Right now, currently I'm working with in a festival as a curator. It's called MENA is Here, and I'm discussing this topic and this title with them, and they are just like thinking of changing it to SWANA, which I also don't agree. But they need a label, as you said. They need a label. On the level of terminology, of level of practicism, I read an article the other day about how decolonizing is becoming the new Orientalism. Yes. Literally, especially for academics, especially for researchers. So right now they are just like literally using this term in all of their papers, in all of their questions, because they have a new material. They have new cases right now. Since October 7, we have a lot of case studies to work on. Which is new trend, which is unfortunately new trend. So that's all the time what I'm afraid of dealing with. But and I was thinking about, okay, I have been living here for a year right now, but I haven't seen any Asian culture festival, African culture festival, Latin American culture festival. But why do we have MENA festival? Why do we have Sawan? Why do we have to label our interventions? But yet, on the other side, we are discussing identity, we are discussing culture. So what do we identify ourselves? How do we label ourselves in this huge field that I mentioned the first, or in the beginning? So we are literally stuck in the middle. I really don't have an answer for this question. I'm facing this problem. I'm facing this concern all the time, but I really don't have an answer, and there's like a clear answer for it, unfortunately. But what we can do, there is several examples that happened since October 7 on the level of funding, level of rejecting that NGOization of solidarity. Because I have seen several events, solidarity with Palestine, voices from Gaza, blah, 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 funded by some just like donors who put the statements at the beginning of 7 October, I stand with Israel. How can you do this? Literally, how can you do this? Goethe Institute in Egypt, they were funding, they had a programmed a specific funding or just like exceptional funding for artists from Gaza. How can you do this? It's literally, how can you do this? So, but there is on the other side a positive examples about. There is an example in 1948 areas in Palestine for a coalition or alliance for cultural organization, artistic organization, and civil society organization called Auna. Auna, which is in Arabic mean the aid or just like the help, which is mainly something before the civil society started or the concept of civil society started, which is people used to help each other. The communities used to help each other in solidarity, just like it's as a chain of solidarity between people. I helped this one, he helped the other one, he helped the other one. So they started this kind of funding process for Auna, and they are still functioning. And it's all based on the fortune from the south of the map, literally. So, and there is several other examples, just like there is another alliance called Landscape of Hopes. I don't know if you heard of them. Landscape of Hopes is just like another coalition or alliance that is started with Action for Hope organization. And it's consists of cultural organization, or artistic organization, or civil society organization from the north of the map. As simple as that. And they are helping each other in funding, in technical support, and everything. They have done a huge festival 2 months ago in Amsterdam about Gaza, which was literally one of the biggest festivals I attended about Gaza and about Palestine. So we can do this. We can, to mention, Action for Hope were one of the huge cultural Arab organization that boycotted the North Fund from the beginning. And they are still functioning, and they are still are able to sustain. I don't know how, but they are still sustained. They have sustainability. I don't know.
We have to ask.
So yeah, we have to ask for sure. But yeah, so there is examples that we can build on this regard. So I don't want to be so pessimistic about it. No, there is examples we can build on, but we have to be realistic for sure. Yeah. We have I don't know if we can say that, we have the cards in our hands. We can renegotiate the terms of everything with the donors, with the funders, with the ethical funding. We can put the terms because they need us. But we need, if we are willing to do this, we are willing to do so, we need to have at least one ground to share, or to one mutual ground about rejecting. Because another example, I was part of in a program between. It was a part of that exchange program, and it was exchange about cultural policy. It was between university in Lebanon, university in Tunisia, and university in Germany. And the entire concept of the program were about the communication and intercultural process of these students about the different cultural policies that is functioning in these 3 countries. And it's called communication, okay? The project called communication. Yet, when the 7th of October started, that program did really bad statements about what's happening in Gaza and rejecting the concept of genocides. And that program and the university that we're working with, the same statements. Then I started this kind of conversation with the participant of this program, this exchange program, okay, especially the Tunisian students. I was telling them, okay, let's do something about it. Okay, we can do something about it because the project is based from two Arabian universities that are exchanging with another university in Germany. If we did any kind of action, they will have to listen to us. Unfortunately, the thing that happened that the Tunisian university started not to do anything about it and to continue the project. But with the Lebanese university, we withdraw with the project because we can't continue. So why I'm mentioning that? Because if us and the other university agreed on withdrawing together from the project, there will be no project. Yeah. And it's a research project for 4 years. I can understand that the needs of this university needs funding for sure. But if we agreed on all rejecting, all boycotting, all just like have specific agenda or specific policy against this kind of funding, we can do something. But if we are saying no and the others say yes, everything will continue. Okay, the funders literally say to us, if you are saying no, we will find 100 more other than you. So yeah, this kind of common ground we need to set as an alliance or a coalition or as an advocacy, how we can speak to donors, how we can speak to funders, so we can put our own terms, so we won't have to change anything. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to highlight the importance of communicating with each other about these things and what can be done and what can't be done. And I think this is a constant conversation with regards to boycotts and just generally deciding on what is a realistic solution that can be done short term, what can be done long term. And I think long term, what the long term work could be is to keep talking basically about the situation and finding a way to I mean, we need to at some point find a solution for if we can't use MENA and we don't want to use MENA or SWANA or Arab speaking because not everyone speaks Arabic, or Arab region because they're not technically all Arabs, and it's just increasing this otherness that we're all constantly feeling. 2 questions. How do we overcome this? I mean, obviously this is a long-term project, and to bring it back to where we are right now, is art a vehicle that can be used to overcome this? And how can art contribute to this particular work that needs to be done on the long term?
Yes.
So, كمان مرة يعني before answering this question, I want to tell Anas something. Anas, we have 2 new labels. يعني we have MENA, SWANA, Arab-speaking country, part of the global south, but currently we are part of the global majority. This is a very recent label that.
Nice.
So, to answer your question, I think yes, communication, coordination, these kinds of events are the key. In terms of what could be the role of art in responding to otherness, the response is briefly artivism. And because artivism or cultural representation in art and activism is crucial also for countering dominant narratives and reductive narratives about us as people from this part of the world. And To define artivism, I will refer to the definition used by the organization I used to work for like 6 years, the Humana for Human Rights and Civic Engagement, which also has this program on human rights defenders in exile and activism in exile. So for Humana, artivism is the intersection of art and activism. It is an essential force for social change, especially in the MENA region where civic spaces are shrinking under authoritarian pressures, and a region where the fight for freedom and dignity continues. Activism is not just an alternative form of activism, it is a crucial strategy for reclaiming public spaces and inspiring action. Activism provides a unique platform for marginalized communities, human rights defenders, and social movements to express their struggles. In this sense, I would say that contemporary exhibition, contemporary artists in the diaspora are really like able to showcase how Arab artists use their work to challenge narratives, to challenge stereotypes about Arabs or Arab-speaking people, and also to reimagine identity. For example, we have artists like Layla Shawa, who is creating pieces that speak both to the pain and the beauty of the Arab culture. Also, we have music that is also playing a significant role, as seen with DJ Habibi, it's شكون, بشكو previously قبل ما يرجعوا, بيزو بيروت, حامد سنو, the former main vocalist of مشروع ليلى. Those people are modernizing the traditional music and pop sounds from our region for a global audience, or also the hip hop and rap performers from the MENA who are based in Europe. Also, singers, artists, performers like Layla Jabr, Basma Jabr, or Bedouin Burger. So these art are really helping to bridge the gap between the diaspora and the homeland, and they are also contributing to creating a renewed and dynamic sense of our identity. This is where I think that art becomes a space for connection, where shared struggles are celebrated in diaspora, and also the sense of otherness that we talked about it is replaced with a new sense of belonging. How we are belonging? I think we are belonging in a non-traditional way, and a new way, and a multifaceted way that takes into consideration how our very fluid identity is transforming in the exile and in diaspora.
Thank you. Anas, do you want to add a little bit about what your approach to fighting this otherness and this new Arab identity that we're trying to share and acknowledge? I think that it's already existing, but we're trying to acknowledge it as it is, as complex as it is, and yes, tell us.
I don't. No, sorry.
You don't?
Okay.
That's okay.
No, but because you were asking about is art able to overcome otherness? No, it doesn't.
It's not enough, of course.
It's not enough,
Yeah.
unfortunately. It should be integrated process between all kind of sectors, political, social, art, cultural, all kind of mandates we need to work on together. But I don't want to be pessimistic about it because I'm still functioning, I'm still studying, I'm still working, I'm still trying to practice. But I'm still trying to find the answer, because if I told you there is an absolute answer, I'm going to be lying. I'm going to just like be theorizing. And I want to comment on the artivism thing, because I believe in the role of art in social change and political change, but I'm really afraid of merging activism with art in general. Why? Because as an artist, we are all the time afraid or concerned about the artistic criteria and the artistic value of what we are providing for the audience. And unfortunately, the Arabic experience or the Arab region experience in most of the arts that is aiming, or just like their objective are social change, they will compromise this artistic values. They will compromise their artistic criteria. In sake of we are doing something for social change, so it doesn't matter if the aesthetics is good. It doesn't matter if the artistic criteria is based on standards. No. And this where I just like really focus whenever I introduce myself as a cultural activist and theater practitioner. I'm not only a theater practitioner, I'm not only cultural activist. Because I'm afraid of NGOization or just like practicing my work within the activism. Unfortunately, I'm a cultural rights defender, but I'm also an artist. I use my art, so I'm always lost in these two approaches. Am I using my art for social, am I an artist using my art for social change or political change, or am I an activist using art to change? So these two approaches may really affect the way people are seeing artivism. That's why, and also artivism is just like really a new term, a new concept that is being just like established after neoliberalism about how we make the arts as a machine for neoliberalism. That's why I'm really afraid of this concept. I truly connect to it because I do most of my artistic art forms are community-based or social or applied. But I'm truly just like concerned about this term. But I can understand the background of it for sure. So, as an answer of what we can do as an artist, for me, I truly believe in the power of education. That's why I'm really focusing on educating. Because especially as an example of what I'm doing right now in Netherlands, just like working with if I didn't get anything of my performances that I'm doing and all of my workshops and trainings, but at least I'm gonna affect or influence this 20 young guy and girl, literally I'm working with. I'm teaching them about the mainstream culture and the counterculture. Domination of the culture, how they are dealing with this the cultural domination of the mainstream culture, how they are expressing their counterculture or their subculture within this mainstream culture, as simple as that. So it starts from just like really small steps, which nearly you can't see an effect or a direct impact of it, but on the long term you will see an impact on it, for sure. But yeah, so yeah, basically that's what I have.
Thank you both. I'm really glad we were able to really dissect all of those questions. I think also the last few things that you both said kind of brought together everything that we were discussing and the problematics that we're all facing in this cultural sector. We're facing them in the cultural sector, but they're really symptoms of things happening outside of the cultural sector. Sometimes us in the cultural sector, we forget that there are things happening outside of it. And we're not gonna save the world, unfortunately. But we can try. So I wanna thank you both again, and I want to open the floor for questions to Anas and Sarah. And I will give the mic.
Tamam kida? Hello. Thank you so much for the conversation. I mean, I think I have two questions. I'll try to make them articulate. First, I have some issues with the terminology. You already do have that, particularly with Arab identity and diaspora. In Arabic, the word Arab originally means an Arabic speaker. Does not mean from the Arab world. Just until 150 years ago, until colonialism started, people had to be reduced into this package that is the Arab world. And they had to stand up for it in return, which is the eternal dilemma, for sure. But it is very interesting, especially being right now in this part of the world with very little connection, actually, to the Arab world. In fact, I had this very little connection when I was in the Arab world itself. before 15 years ago, I was myself an imam, a very conservative personality, a preacher, someone you wouldn't like to associate yourself with at all, in this room especially. But I embodied everything that you would call still an Arab. When I switched to the other life, I was still an Arab, but everything opposite. But I was still a minority in this Arab world. It's very tricky for me to realize that there are things some people think they want to preserve from the Arab world, because in fact, when I was in the Arab world, all I wanted is destroy everything to do with that culture, if that makes sense. In fact, many things that are associated in this part of the world with the right wing are ingrained in our culture. You know, I came to Belgium just this year, and in the first 2 weeks there was an anti-abortion demonstration, something very Arab, if you can call that. I am confused. Why would this be something someone wants to preserve outside these borders first? Especially with the diversity the Arab world already has. You really can't say there's an Arabic culture. In Egypt itself, where I come from, there are like 100 cultures already. There are, perhaps, I'm forced to be in this part of the world at the moment, it's not my choice. And I can think of, in my new life to be, there are many things I could do that are not essentially connected with my past. I look forward to fight for abortion here, for to have just to ongoing to forge new grounds for my life to be here. Because I understand some people can struggle for being recognized and for being seen, but if you show yourself in a channel where it's labeled Arab, it's tricky then to complain afterwards of being treated like an Arab. You know, this duality is very tricky, and then you submit yourself to it, and then complaining afterwards is tricky. I have an issue also with diaspora, which is like, for example, I have a German friend who in the 70s, when the military service was compulsory in Germany, had to escape, and he lived like 30 years around the world. Does the term diaspora apply to white people as well if they are outside their countries? Is it only about us? Is it about also the Moroccan guy in that butcher shop or is it only about political Arabs and educated Arabs or Arabs who speak English? So, yeah, what is it about the Arab identity that actually anyone would want to bring outside from the Arab world to the rest of the world? And what constitutes a diaspora, like the first two terminology in that poster headline? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. What's your name? Ahmad. Okay. Thank you, Ahmad, for this problematic question, controversial question. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't know if I have an answer, but I'm trying just like to discuss what you have said. Based on my own opinion, nothing binding. So let's discuss the elephant in the room right now at the beginning. You are Egyptian and I'm Syrian. We're speaking English to each other. First. Unfortunately, but I know for logistical reasons, I know we had to find just like this common language that we need to speak of. But I totally agree what you have said, and I'm facing all of this in an existential way. But from what I understand, why we need to preserve the Arabic identity or the identity that we hold from our home country for the new places that we are moving, it's not something consciously, it's not something conscious, I think, for me. It's something beyond the conscious, unconsciously, we are trying to do. Because most of our socialization system first in our own family, then in the school, neighborhoods, and then from our own country. It's based on this culture. It's several culture, 100 culture. But we are indoctrinated in these cultures through all of our life. And then we move to a new culture, move to new environment. Then we start saying, I don't want to deal with my old identity, my old self anymore, my own culture anymore. But rejecting the culture is, for me at least, is recognizing the culture itself. Because I don't want to do this culture. I don't want to be from this identity. But on the time, you will recognize that this culture unconsciously will appear in your daily life practice. In the sociology of art or sociology of culture, we call it habitus. Habitus is the unconscious manner. The unconscious manner that we are dealing with each other, but even though if we try to change it one time and we focus on changing it, it keep appearing. It keep appearing without even us noticing about it. How we are dealing with each other, it's really related from where we are from how we have been educated, how we have been treated socially, psychologically, everything, how we have been raised from our own families. So I think it's, for me at least, it's something unconscious, why we are focusing on our identities, why we are going back to our own identities. As an artist, for me, as I mentioned in the beginning, I go back to my own identity because I want to be seen here, as simple as that. Because I'm not cherishing my own culture. I'm not cherishing my own one and only identity, but I need to be noticed in this million of artists who is living in Netherlands and Belgium and Germany. As simple as that. So yeah, this too.
Thank you, Ahmad, for the question. But I think like why we are trying, some of us, to preserve their own culture or ID, because I think this is a kind of psychosocial response to collective violence. So when you are encountered or facing collective violence, the very human, psychological, and social response and mechanism is to cling and try to preserve your own culture. And because of a very important thing, because it's a choice. It is our very own personal choice to choose either we appreciate or not our own ID or identity. For me, as someone who came from the Middle East, I'm Lebanese, whatever, or from wherever, and I do not hate my identity, and I love my identity. There is very good values and rich history and culture that I appreciate. I still have problems with some very traditional values in my identity, with religion, with society, with political system. But it doesn't mean that I hate my identity. This is what shaped me. I'm here today because of my history, because of my old identity. The trick is to accept the changes to our identity, and to embrace it, to embrace this change in order to accept them, and in order to accept ourselves, and in order to learn lessons from our old past experiences and identities in order to evolve. And regarding your question to diaspora, I think there is no final definition of diaspora. Many scholars have said that diaspora is those people who left, even forced or voluntarily left, their own home countries and to new countries and new host countries, but they still have connections with homeland. These connections can manifest in terms of cultural connections, trying to preserve their own culture, or economic connection, trying to support people back home. However, there is too many forms of diaspora. Scholars, like I can just mention at least 4 scholars that have put very different categories of diaspora. We have, for example, the Chinese and the Lebanese diaspora that are the entrepreneurial diaspora. We have the religious diaspora, like the Jewish diaspora in Europe or in the US. We have the political diaspora. You, as an Egyptian, many scholars consider that you belong to the political diaspora. Syrians are political diaspora. So there is no final definition of diaspora. It's something very flexible, very fluid. It is still need to be studied, either even though it is has been studied for the last I don't know 50 years, but it is still understudied. And each form of diaspora since it's changing, like still to be also studied more and more. The Lebanese diaspora has been entrepreneurial in some decades, but in other time has been also political. This is what is happening exactly at this moment. We've been entrepreneurial, we've been economic, now we're becoming more political because of the war happening in our countries. So yeah, there is no final answer to your questions, but I think if there is one thing I can say about diaspora, culture, identity, is to embrace change.
Yes, it's like, commenting on the same terms, because I forgot to just like go back to it. I totally agree on the social, just like practical use of this word diaspora. In Syria, diaspora, or just like, or in Arabic, in the Arabic diaspora called Jaliya, which is, and in Syria we only label the Syrian or diaspora who the people who left Syria before 2011. The others are refugees. So, and most of the people who left Syria before 2011 or 10, mostly either political or traders, or they have their own investment in Egypt, Turkey, or UK, or Germany, or any other places. So, but answering your question, what we call the Americans who are European, who are just like expats. Unfortunately, yes, yeah. Yeah, yes, and this label, this is unconscious label of how we are treating with people. The Dutch government labeled the students or the well-educated refugees highly skilled immigrants, while the non-educated refugees just like asylum seeker. As simple as that. So there is segregation based on class. It's based on distinction, literally. Distinction theory between classes, between people from different background, different culture. So, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm expats here. No, not.
You became an expat. You were a refugee, you became an expat, right? In the definition you gave. Like
yeah. Yeah.
Asylum seeker.
Yes, exactly.
I really feel like I want to say this because it's when you mentioned belonging and then doing belonging differently. And there's something about everything that has been said that I feel comes, it might be a bit academic how I will phrase this, but it's coming really from a discipline of cultural studies, of also the cultural scene. And somehow, I studied geography and I have more of a structuralist, okay, not only, but I have this, and there was a voice in me saying, like, get them out of their misery by saying something. I'm sorry. So, but because there is something that goes back to, yeah. Sorry, I lost a bit my point by trying to be funny. Yeah, there's something I think in the way I studied geography, critical Marxism, and also in my PhD to give like very, whereas I didn't really use this, I had to go look in cultural studies and political science and anthropology and all this to kind of deconstruct this whole thing about identity. Because of simply being called an insider, like being always treated as an insider because I'm doing research with Syrian and Iraqi refugees about housing. And somehow I also came like, I'm an insider, I speak the language and I know. And then somehow I was like, oh my God, like I'm a more colonial than the university I'm in, you know, because of how, I mean, I'm Lebanese, so I also came from a French school and all this, and I had to do this whole labor of deconstructing to kind of then go to this, what I mentioned at the beginning, this other, let's say, discipline that kind of gave me back some center about, like, culture is a slippery slope. Belonging, why do we need to belong? What, where, to what, actually? And this is where, for me, when you said this, something clicked in me, and I was like, no, actually, and that relates to this question, because we think, like, it's actually about deconstructing this point, that we bring everything that was discussed today, somehow like make peace with it by saying, actually, we name it, ما بعرف, it's practical or technical or ما بعرف, logistic or what, as you said, or whatever, but deep down, what, do I need it? And then at some point, I don't know, maybe now I'm getting philosophical, but there's a thing, when you mentioned belonging, I was like, I don't need to belong, actually, but at the same time, I do need to belong, because we came to this world being told that, like, this is the quest, right? Like, we're here to belong, and if you don't feel home, or you don't belong, or where am I? I'm not here, not there. But actually, I feel like we can all, like, be saved from this misery. But I mean, after a lot of work, I think it's not there. Huh? But it's just that I think there's work to do with changing the way we're looking at it. Like, yeah, by going outside Arabness, outside identity, like also different, like the situatedness as a person in different spheres. I can be Arab there. I can be Shia here. I can be less Shia when I'm a Shia family, because I hate that. I can be very Shia when someone is actually making fun of Ashura, because I actually learned a lot of stuff there. So I have stuff to say. I can be different things, because it's all this part that makes me. I can be, no, sorry, I can never be Phoenician, but I thought I could joke, but I can never do that. But like, but I mean, we can be all these parts depending where we are. And I feel to go back to this first, like, failed joke. It's like this structuralist way of thinking actually helped me get there, because it was like, okay, and it's, again, it has its limits, because it's all about class and like it's a analysis of class, and it's all an economic geography analysis, but it kind of somehow brings this back to where are we situated, and it doesn't stop at our economic positioning, but a different positioning. And somehow it kind of make identity lose this overwhelming weight that we hold. Like, how do we define? Why do we need to belong, actually? Voilà. I don't know if this spiral of thought got...
Yeah, for me, that makes perfect sense, literally. Yeah, because the main idea of this talk is deconstructing this kind of experiences, knowledge that we have, everything that we are, and reflecting on them. As an example, what you are saying, truly right now, and what you are saying also, I'm going to quote you the second time, for the fluidity of the identity. Yes, really, because and shifting identities, because I always say that I can be an extremist with Islamophobes, literally, and I can be a total hard-ass atheist with the Islamists, literally. So this is literally shifting identities based on the situation, based on the context. But knowing that what is your own middle ground of the culture identity. So yeah, so I totally agree. Yes, I totally second that.
I would also add some insights. Actually, your question is very important, and I think that there is no answer to this question. Do we need to belong? I don't know. So there is sometimes where I feel that, yes, I need to belong. I'm a woman, and I need to defend women. But there is many times where I feel that I don't have a gender. I'm a human being. Like my own understanding of feminism is having this ultimate equality, but also ultimate duties and being aware of my privileges. Let's go back to the idea of, do we need to belong? My question, how do the host communities of the other perceives you? This is what put label over your head, that you belong, even though you are not choosing to belong to this group, you are seen as part of this group. And then when there is violence exercised over this group, you will unconsciously start to resist and to reject this violence. And maybe also we can refer to what Derrida called the politics of a friendship, because also friendships are a form of political relationships. And if we use this notion to understand how our identities are perceived in host communities and in the diaspora, this will help us a lot choosing whether we belong or to. And I think also that it's one of the ultimate form of freedom, is to have the freedom to choose to belong or not, or when to belong and when not.
Sorry, I'm going to be abused that I have the mic, but I just want to say that there was a point in everything I said that for me, belonging now is belonging to anti-Zionism. So when you said we are part of a global majority, and for me it's really taking out, this takes us out from this wanting to be labeled to actually, you want to label me? Fuck Israel, that's my label, you know? So, and that's why, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and that's because of my history and my culture and my land and what I lived and what I grew up with and what Palestine, and then from there it goes to all forms of oppression, and this I think takes away this focus from wanting to have a label to then having actually a political identity that connects to where we come from.
I'm gonna confiscate it now. No, I just want to add one last thing, which is more or less what all of you guys have been saying much more eloquently. My answer to this is much more emotional, which is that really, literally, and it's also very much what has defined our decision-making when deciding on terminologies or criteria or whatever within Mersat, which is literally like, we need to belong because our belonging is at stake. If our belonging was not at stake, we wouldn't need to be. And I think this is applicable to any other conversation about identity politics, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's Global South in general, whether it's minorities, whether it's like, I think in any case where there is a danger of being something, you have to acknowledge that you are that something, whether it's because someone else sees you as that or because you actually are that. It becomes a little bit irrelevant. And this is also why, at the end of the day, if we're gonna group ourselves into that, we just need to make a decision and choose a term and go with it for now until we get to something better. And just kind of trust that, you know, we're not gonna sit and tell other people that, oh, I'm more of an activist than you because I'm using these terms and you're not. Like, it just needs to come from an emotional, honest place. At least that's the approach I'm taking for now. And yeah, I mean, this conversation has been really enlightening and also reassuring that we're all in this. It's reassuring that we're all in the same confusion and to kind of share the fact that we're not looking to accuse each other of things. Yeah, I mean, it's really important to highlight the complexity of this. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here and for joining the conversation. And thank you Anas and Sarah for everything you've shared.